But we begin in Ukraine, where Russian President Vladimir Putin has dubbed the mission in Mariupol a success.
But he has ordered Russian forces not to storm that steel plant where hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers and civilians are hunkered down. Putin says the people inside should be offered the chance to surrender. Ukrainian President Zelensky says thousands of civilians are still trapped in the port city and called Russia's blockade a, quote, terrorist operation. Ukrainian officials say Russian forces have not honored the agreed-upon evacuation corridors.
The mayor of Mariupol says he is waiting on evacuation buses to arrive in the city today. 4 buses with civilians did manage to leave on Wednesday, but a Ukrainian military official says Russian forces continued their bombardment of the city during evacuation negotiations. Meanwhile, the U.S. is giving more aid to Ukraine as the conflict reaches a critical point. President Biden announced today roughly $800 million in security assistance to help Ukraine fight Russian forces in the east.
This package includes heavy artillery weapons, dozens of howitzers, and 144,000 rounds of ammunition to go with those howitzers. It also includes more tactical drones. Putin is banking on us losing interest. He's betting on Western unity will crack. He's still betting on that. And once again, we're going to prove him wrong. We will not lessen our resolve. We're going to continue to stand with the brave and proud people of Ukraine. We will never fail in our determination to defend freedom and oppose tyranny.
Well, joining us now from Kyiv is CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay. Chris, welcome. As you know, the president announced another $800 million in military aid. He also said the U.S. is banning Russian-affiliated ships from American ports as a way to further isolate Moscow. And he also announced a new program that would help refugees come directly from Europe to the United States. So what sort of impact might all of this have? How meaningful is it?
Well, all of those measures are meaningful, but none more meaningful than the announcement of $800 million in military aid, specifically the heavy artillery like the dozens of howitzers that President Biden announced. That's the kind of thing that the government here has been practically begging for ever since the start of the invasion. You know, at the time they were getting things like those shoulder-mounted missile launchers known as javelins that were very effective in taking out tanks as they were invading urban areas. But now we're moving into a different phase of the war in eastern Ukraine, in which you're going to have a lot more of that heavy, long-range artillery, and Ukrainians desperately need it in order to push back the Russian forces, which still drastically outnumber them and have more military power than the Ukrainians have. This is a very real war. That's something I feel like I just have to drive home because I just got back from visiting a sort of junkyard where a lot of cars in the Kyiv area that have been shot up by the by the Russian military have been taken off of the road. Many of these cars have the word children written on the side of them. They have white flags. They were clearly owned by civilians who were trying to escape from the invaders, and there are still body parts inside of these cars. So when people like Joe Biden and the president of Ukraine talk about genocide, this is what they're talking about. But they're also talking about something that's even more sinister in a way than, and that's the fact that Vladimir Putin and his ideology doesn't allow for the Ukrainian people to exist, not physically per se, but as an idea. He sees them as Russians and not even knowing it, and is determined to drive that idea into their heads, dead or alive. So this is what's at stake for Ukrainians here. This is why they continue to beg for more and more military aid. So this $800 million from the White House is absolutely welcome. But when you talk to military analysts here on the ground, they fear it's only going to last for a couple of weeks as this war continues to grind on. So they're very hopeful that this is just the beginning of more to come.
Chris, it is so difficult to hear those details as you're reporting them. But with all of that in mind, let's talk about Mariupol, because, of course, Putin has declared that a success. But as you know, thousands of civilians and Ukrainian military are still trapped there. So what are you hearing about the likelihood that Ukrainian soldiers will surrender, especially in light of everything you described of how Russian soldiers have been treating Ukrainian civilians and military?
They have absolutely no reason to surrender because they have no reason to trust the Russians or the terms of this surrender that has been offered to them several times. First, it was surrender or die. Now Vladimir Putin is telling them that if they lay down their arms, they'll be treated with respect. They know this is an empty offer because they have seen the Russians fire upon humanitarian corridors in Mariupol, these agreed upon safe pathways for civilians to flee the city. Just this morning, there were supposed to have been thousands of citizens of Mariupol allowed to flee the city, but only a few busloads were able to actually get civilians to safety because, once again, those humanitarian corridors, according to the Ukrainians, were not being respected. If they're not treating civilians with any kind of decency, why should they expect the Russians to treat the defenders of the city with any decency? So no, we're not getting any indication that they're ready to lay down their arms. I mean, in Mariupol and around Mariupol in this part of southern Ukraine, there are reports of so-called filtration camps where people, Ukrainians are being taken into pro-Russian territory or into Russia itself in order to be taught proper Russian ways of thinking. According to the Ukrainian ambassador to the United Nations, more than 100,000 children from the area have been taken into Russia and offered to Russian families for adoption. So once again, when I talk about, or rather when Ukrainians talk about genocide, this is what they're talking about. Not necessarily killing Ukrainians, but killing the idea of being Ukrainian, killing the identity of Ukrainian.
So unfortunately, the war will continue. Chris Livesay on the ground in Ukraine. Stay safe. Thank you, Chris.